Welcome, everybody, to the Southeast Project Podcast. We are here again where we are having conversations at the crossroads between making decisions around whether we go to community college or we go to a four-year university. I am your host, Rico, and this is my co-host, Katrina. But today, Katrina, we have two special guests joining us.
Amazing. I'm glad to have you guys here.
And these are Belinda and Martha. They are professionals in this field of education, working everything from K-12 to higher education. Actually, you're going to hear from a community college perspective and four-year perspective. And just hear our stories, hear our experiences around it. So if you're someone who is asking yourself that question, what's the best way for me to go? Do I go the community college route? What are the benefits? What are some of the challenges? Or do I go to the four-year university? I hope you find value in this, and I want to encourage you, questions that you have, put them down in the chat below. We'd love to continue to engage with you and answer your specific questions as well. So let's get started. What's on the chat for today, Katrina? What are we talking about?
Well, money is always an important part. So let's start out talking about costs. Talk to me about community colleges. How does cost get in there?
First, thanks for having us or having me here. But yes, I think that cost is definitely an issue because the word is always out that community colleges are cheaper in cost, and a four-year university always hurts the wallet a little bit. So I think that's definitely what's out.
Thank you. That was Belinda. My bad. That was Belinda speaking. Martha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Martha. And I think when it comes to community colleges, I have over 8 years of experience working in community colleges and also in a university setting recently. I think when it comes to community college, it is a lot, less expensive than going directly to a university setting. Sometimes they are the same classes. Sometimes you'll get some of the same instructors, but you'll get a different price tag. Mm-hmm. So I think, when trying to think about what decision you want to make, what's really important is doing the research behind it and saying what's going to fit best your lifestyle. So that's some of my recommendation.
Well, that's right, because I remember even when I was in college, right, and I went to community college, then I went to a four-year, mm-hmm. and there was a history class that I needed to take, and it wasn't offered during that spring semester. So came summer, I went and took it, mm-hmm. and lo and behold, it was a professor that's a full-time tenured professor at my local university, teaching that same history class mm-hmm. at the community college.
Yeah. So sometimes, it just really depends what you want to pursue. I know with community college and university, sometimes the majors, they're different. But sometimes you might get the same instructors, same teaching abilities. And it just really depends what future you want to take. So if there's a major, for example, wastewater operator, you can only do that at a community college, but it pays over $100,000 a year.
What?
Yes.
And we're in the wrong field.
Yeah. Or if you want to become an educator, sometimes you want to go to a university setting. Sometimes you get paid around $70,000 or over. So it really depends on your goals and, what you're going to be happy with at the end of the day working with. So.
Well, I think one of the things too is, especially if you're thinking about, which one is the better financial investment. Mm-hmm. One thing that I experienced, I remember when I was getting ready to go to college, is I looked at how much was it going to cost based on the aid that I got if I went to the community college. Mm-hmm. How much was I going to get based on aid? Because my family didn't have money, right? We didn't have a college saving or anything. I was going to go off on scholarships and loans. Mm-hmm. But then I looked at how much was it going to cost for me to go to the four-year and then maybe this other four-year. And so I was looking at my local community college, shout out Grossmont Community College. Mm-hmm. I was looking at San Diego State, and I was looking at Point Loma, right? So here in San Diego. And actually, of the three, the one where I was going to be the cheapest it ended up being Point Loma, which was the most expensive one. Mm-hmm. But because the more that it costs, the more aid that you get, mm-hmm. right? And now, that's with the caveat that community college would have been free now because there's a lot more grants. They didn't have those when I was going to college. But right there's one of those things to think about is not to just automatically jump in and think that's out of my price bucket.
And on that same note, I lived in a neighborhood here in Southeast San Diego, and everyone I knew was going to community college. Most people were going. So even though I had worked really hard and got good grades, I thought, okay, well, I guess I'm supposed to go to community college. And when I talked to my parents, they said, we've saved for college. We've been saving. You didn't work this hard for no reason. So it's up to you. You know, you tell us where you want to go. We'll tell you if we can afford it, not the other way around. They'll tell me what I can't afford. And so I actually was thinking I couldn't afford it when we could. And also I was just really looking at the neighborhood and thinking like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do, and found out I had other options. So it's not always, even though in many, many cases it's the cheaper, it's not always the cheaper, and it's not always for everyone. So you really have to do your research.
Yes, I agree with doing your research because I went to Cal State Los Angeles and I was in the middle of taking classes, but I had to take a few general classes because I went directly to the 4-year. And I found out, I did research, and at East Los Angeles College down the street, they were offering the same courses for way less. So I went ahead and enrolled in those, and I still continue to go to Cal State LA, but you just have to do the research, like you said, and see what's best for what you want to do and what you can actually afford as well.
Yeah. And I think just adding to that, I think having a plan, even when you're in, even let's say if you do want to go to community college, you know, at least with my experience, I know I stayed there a little bit longer than intended because there was other classes that I wanted to take, like dance classes, art classes. So I think meeting with a counselor is really important to, you know, because sometimes even though it's a little bit, you know, cheaper than going to a university, those classes can add up. So, you know, having a plan and trying to stick with it as best as you can, I think is really important too.
Yeah. What about other costs? So oftentimes we think about, you know, do I make my decision on where to go? And I hope that if you're listening, really either option can be really good, right? There's not one is better than the other in general. It's what's going to be better for you. But there's other costs beyond tuition, right? What are some of the other costs that you think students should be thinking about as they make their decision on where to go?
Well, the time it takes to get the degree, definitely. At a community college, it's a 2-year commitment. And at a 4-year, it's a 4-year, right? At a university, it's a 4-year commitment. So that's something that they really need to look at as well, to consider if they want something, if you want to spend your time and get a trade or just an associate's degree, or even transfer, that's another option. But yes, that's, I think, one of the things that you need to consider if you want to study for 2 years or 4 years.
I can add to that as well. I think something that students need to start thinking about is logistics as well. How much is it going to take you to travel to the university versus a community college? It's your time. Time is very important. So you have to make sure you have enough time. Money is also very important. So I think thinking about, you know, not just the major and, you know, the university or community college, but thinking about those logistics. How much is it going to take you to travel? What about housing expenses? You know, are you going to have enough money to pay your bills after you pay your classes, your books, you know, anything extra? So I think those are good things to start thinking about. And another thing is, you know, creating a plan. So having a plan even for the smallest thing. So I think those are good, you know, cost expenses to think about.
You bring up a good point, because cost isn't always money. It can be time.
Yeah.
And the time, it's not just, 2 years and then 4 years, but it's the time of driving there or commuting there or flying. If you pick a 4-year college that is out of area and you have to fly there, what happens during holidays? Can you stay in the dorm, or do you have to go back home? Or what about your job? Will your job wait for you? Can you work there on vacations, or will you lose a job? Or, you know, there's a lot of time considerations that need to go into that decision too.
And I think, you know, the cost of relationships, Are there ways that you're involved in your current community that having to uproot and go somewhere else? Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you want to, get out and explore, but that's something to consider too as a cost. Martha, you mentioned earlier degree types. They're different. I did not know that when I was trying to choose a major and decide what I was going to do for the rest of my life at 18. Which again, like now I laugh at it. It's like I had no idea. Tell us a little bit more about that. So degrees are different at a community college than at a 4-year sometimes.
Yes. So with, let's say for a community college, there are, certificate of achievements, there are associate degrees. Now more, community colleges are partnering up with universities and creating 4-year degrees. They're not that common and popular, but, their community colleges are trying to build those partnerships, which are great. When it goes to a university, there are like the bachelor degree. There are more professional degrees, like a master degree, if you want to work on your PhD. But sometimes, what I like to say is, let's say, for example, a student wanted to do a community college 4-year degree, which is essentially a bachelor. I would say, it's essentially, just from my perspective, it's the same thing. If you wanted to pursue that at a community college or a university.
And sometimes you can do both. Like I remember I was going to the 4-year for nursing, but at the same time, I went to Southwestern, the Otay campus, for the EMT program.
Yeah.
And so that allowed me to start working on an ambulance while getting skills to then also get my nursing degree, right? Like I didn't finish nursing. I didn't go that path. I'm in education now, but it allowed me to actually get hands-on practice, which is something that I feel a lot of 4-year universities, they're very theoretical, very conceptual. 2-year community colleges, sometimes those degrees tend to be more vocation driven, get a job right after this. Is that fair to say?
That is, yeah. And I think, just sharing an example, I'll bring up my husband because my husband went to community college. He became a wastewater operator. So he, that degree is very hands-on. It's at Cuyamaca College. It's kind of like a trade degree, but it's actually an associate degree. But it was very hands-on learning. They had to send them to like the Miramar waste plants and San Alejo, all of those. And I think when it comes to, like how Dr. Ramos said, university degrees, sometimes they are very theoretical. You're really focused on what you're learning. There's some internship courses. I think internships are getting very popular. So I know universities are really making that effort, but there are differences. I feel like community college is a little bit more hands-on. I think just depending on like the degree that you pick.
Yes, I definitely agree with you on that. It's very true because it seems like like you said, a 2-year college, it seems like you have more opportunities to put what you're learning into play. And at a 4-year or at a university, sometimes it's towards the end, like the practicum that comes in the end. And sometimes when you get to the practicum, you could secondhand, think, is this the right field that I chose when you get into practicing, So when you do have that hands-on while you're going through like the courses, he was at EMT and, taking the nursing courses, you were getting hands-on. And so you're more than likely to say, yes, this is what I like. And then continue on, or you can switch off, opposed to waiting after 4 years towards the end of the degree to get your practicum hours in.
There's another benefit that the word community is in community college. And I did something similar to Rico, as I was out of 4-year college, but I did take some classes at community college while I was there. And part of it was because I missed community. You talked about the relationships. I missed my neighborhood. I grew up in Southeast San Diego, and Point Loma Nazarene University didn't look anything like it. And so it was nice to take classes every now and then and go back to what was essentially my old neighborhood. So I went to San Diego City College, has an educational cultural complex, which is right in the middle of my old neighborhood. And I saw people who looked like me, people from my neighborhood. So I got to have a little bit of that and get credit for college. So community college is in a community, and that's a benefit as well.
I will give another perspective that actually I just thought about. I think, of course, community college is awesome. I went to community college, but also university settings are amazing. I think sometimes, instructors have a little bit more time, I think, or are able to provide, I think, sometimes better support. Community colleges sometimes have big classrooms. And at least, I was a Point Loma student. And, whenever I asked my program director or instructor for help, I just felt always supported. So I think, thinking about sometimes a university like Point Loma University, I was able to get the support that I needed, even when I started in my bachelor degree. So I think there's like pros and cons for like every sector, but I really received the support that I needed, at least, from Point Loma.
Yeah, I think Belinda alluded to that a little bit earlier about the different schools. So Point Loma Nazarene University, very different from San Diego State University, and I attended both. There's different sizes, different classroom sizes. Some are really big, and the pros are there's a lot of options, a lot of clubs, a lot of groups you could be a part of, but class sizes could be big.
Yeah.
So there are different pros and cons depending on size.
Yes, and I think that could also be with a community college is more open when it comes to when you apply the enrollment process. You can easily get in, and opposed to a 4-year, there's more of a competitive entry. So I could see where a professor, where it's more competitive, has more time because you're investing more, not only financially, but for the career itself. So I could see where you would get more undivided attention in a 4-year. But I wouldn't knock down the community college, because there are many professors that are vested and make that time and are passionate about what they're the field that they're or the classes that they're teaching, that make that time, that care for their students, and you'll find it in both.
I think at the end of the day, right, a lot of the main piece is, who are you, right? What do you need? Because depending on that need, right, and I would encourage you, if you're listening to this and you're wondering, okay, I'm still trying to decide, maybe write it down on paper. What are you, someone who needs a bigger community? Or are you someone who's like, no, I want something more intimate, where I want smaller class sizes? Are you someone who wants to take classes with the person who wrote the book? Or are you just like, I just want to learn, and it doesn't matter who I'm learning from? Are you someone who needs different affinity groups and fraternities, sororities, the fun campus culture and party and all that? Or are you someone who's, I'm just about my schooling and getting this done and having career opportunities and internships? All those questions, I think the more that you equip yourself with, who am I? What do I want? What do I need for what I want to do? And then those are big questions. I mean, I say it now, but when I was 18, was not thinking that big. But if you think about that and you start having that conversation, I think that'll help you decide what is the better option for you. Right? I think what I'm hearing is, hey, there's great options in all of them. And whether you're at a 2-year or 4-year, you can find an institution that has strong, vibrant community, or one that's empty of it. You can find community colleges that have classrooms of 100, and you can find a 4-year university with classrooms of 100, or classrooms of 15 in both. I think at the end of the day, is really looking at what do you need to learn best? We were joking actually before we jumped on the podcast that I do great in online education, right? I did not do well when I was in my 4-year because I was the kid that wanted to be surfing all the time. I can't sit still, so sitting in a lecture was just not working for me. But the moment that I went online, I did it on my pace, on my schedule, and I could, listen to lectures while I went out surfing. So a lot of it is just getting to know, how do you learn best? What type of community you're needing. Mm-hmm.
So we've talked costs, we've talked degrees, we've talked admissions, campus life. What about part-time, full-time, working, commuter students, what can we say? What's the difference between a 4-year and community college with those issues?
I think for commuting, I think kind of what I shared earlier, I think learning about, cost and transportation, how you're going to be getting there. I think logistics is really important just as much as selecting your major. So I think, it's always difficult to think about which option you want to take, at least for your major. I think thinking about, other things as well. Sometimes, I like to say pursue your dreams, but also pursue something that you're good at, and at least with my my perspective is I wanted to do nursing. That was the very first major that I wanted to do. And then I was going to do the practicum where I was supposed to take out blood. And I'm like, no, that is not going to happen. So that's when I changed to higher education. And, I think it was the best decision that I ever made. But I also did take those considerations, like thinking about logistics. Is this something that I can afford? Trying to research, scholarships. So I think thinking about other stuff, not just the degree, but thinking about how you're going to pay for that degree is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it really is important. I know that for me, it was hard because when I got accepted to Cal State LA, I had a car at the time, and you have to think about those logistics. I had to pay for my registration. You have to pay for the gas, and then when my car broke down, you have to think about. I had to take the bus to work, and so those are things that you really have to put into that plan. That things that may happen. So if you're going to be commuting, or you're going to be staying on campus, how are you going to be paying for all those things and opening a bank account and all the things that it requires to be independent and on your own are things that you have to look at when you're in a 4-year university. And even if you're at a community college, those are things that you still need to be looking at if you're going to be driving or commuting, taking the bus or the metro or what have you. How are you going to pay for all of that? In addition to the tuition from the campus, the things to just get by, your daily life, the food, the laundry, all of that. If you're not going to be home and getting support from your parents, how you have to think about all those things. And so, yes, very costly to be a student.
Pressures.
Yeah. And I would say one of the things too is regardless of which path you take, making sure you have community and not just community with your peers, right? Other students that are there with you or the faculty that you're learning under, but know that both at community college and at 4-year, there are so many people like all of us here talking to you today that we go into this profession because we love helping you. Our whole job, if you come into our office or if you call us or if you email us, we'd rather be doing that than all of our paperwork.
Yes, for sure.
So if you're hearing this, hear this, right? If you take one thing out of all this, as you're considering all these things, there are people across the university. You can go into student unions, you can go into the student support building. They have different names, right? But look at the map, find it. And I'll say we, right? All of us here around this table, we are waiting for you. And we've actually been reaching out to you, probably, check your email, because we want to be able to help you, right? There are resources out there to help you with different scholarships, looking for financial aid, finding out how to best resource you. Sometimes there's resources on campus that can help you because, hey, even if you have a meal plan, let's say if you live on campus, the cafeteria is not always open during times that you can go eat. And so you're going to need, and so some campuses have food pantries. There's no shame in that. These are resources that are for you, that your tuition already paid for it. Look at it that way, right? So if you don't take advantage of these resources, whether it's counseling, chaplaincy, if you're at a faith institution, food resources, scholarships, all of that are the resources that your tuition already paid for. Take advantage. Otherwise, you're just leaving it on the table.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's some unspoken pressures. Right, we've been talking about all these pieces, but sometimes, and maybe this is you, I know it was for me a little bit, sometimes there's family or community expectations that are pushing you one way or another. What do you all think? How can we overcome those pressures?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I know for me, in my household, it was always you need to go straight to a four-year university. You shouldn't waste time at a community college. So I did that, but then it was also very difficult when I got to a four-year university, being the first time away from home, the first time getting a job, the first time for everything, And so my first semester was very difficult. I didn't pass all my classes, so right away I had to talk to a counselor to get support on that. And so, yes, I think that you have to think about these things. And I don't think that it really makes, I think for me, it doesn't make a difference. I'm in the early childhood education field. And I know that when resumes and education, transcripts come my way, I really look at the passing grades of the courses that are taken and not necessarily what college or university you took. You attended to get those units. So I think that you need to really look at what's best for you and not the pressures that your family wants for you, because in the end, you're the one that's going to be, whoever's listening, you're the one that's going to be sitting down in those classrooms or virtually logging on and see what best meets your needs and what you're looking for and what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think I can add to that. I think, there's not just family expectations, but sometimes, especially when you graduate from high school, there's friends' expectations. Your friends expect you, sometimes to go to the same universities that they're going to, same community colleges, or maybe not even going to college at all, So I think trying to navigate not just family responsibilities, society responsibilities, but also, maybe going against from what your friends want to do can be something that's challenging and also, a pressure that you have to deal with. So I think taking all these things into consideration, the reason I share with friends is because I had something similar. My friends wanted to go to a particular school, and I was like, you know what? At least in my experience, I wanted to take some time off. And that's what I did. And, I came back in my experience better than ever. But, I had a lot of expectations from my friends and, what they wanted to do. And I had a different view of what I wanted to do. So I think, sometimes friends, of course, they can be a great support, but make sure you follow what you want to do. Because, like how you shared, at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to have to sit down and do the job. And you don't want to regret and having to go do another associate degree or another bachelor degree to, do what you actually wanted to do from the beginning.
Yeah. With that, right, one of the things that drives a lot of people are salary expectations. So sometimes I know I've heard students say, well, if I go to the 4-year, like that's how you're going to actually make money. I don't know. Is that accurate?
At least, from my experience right now, I've worked both in the community college sector and in the university sector and career services. I don't think that is true. Having done a lot of research for career services, sometimes, even the community college degree can get you a higher salary than a university degree. So really, it all comes down to what's going to make you happy at the end of the day. And, the salary expectations, sometimes family has, they expect you to be earning a certain salary, doctor salary, lawyer salary. But, what if you want to be happy with your art salary or your teacher salary, So I think the salaries, of course, are very important, but also consider what's going to make you happy at the end of the day.
And the fact that those salaries that we tend to look at are not first-year salaries. So sometimes when friends, family have these expectations that once you get your degree, you're going to start there. Just like any field, you usually start at the bottom and you work your way up. So just having a degree, whether it's an associate's or a bachelor's, doesn't mean that you're going to start with a 6-figure salary.
Yeah. And I think, researching I mean, this is at least what I did. I researched the lowest possible salary that I could earn in higher education. And then I researched the highest salary expectation I could earn in higher education. And that's how I determined that I'm like, okay, I think I want to go into higher education, So I think maybe doing that could be a tool that you could use. What's the lowest? And if you're happy with that lowest, or if you're happy with the highest salary. But I think, trying to do your research behind salaries is really important.
Yes, and I do also want to add that there is, in a way, a salary difference, and some, at least in education, like coming from the school district. I know that some of the educators that have an AA degree do make less of a salary, of an annual income, than a teacher with an educator with a master's or a bachelor's degree. So there is a salary difference. But like you said, you have to really think about what it is that you want and do the research of what pays the bottom and what's at the top. And you have to think about that as you're choosing the degree that you want to pursue.
Yeah. And I can add a little bit more to that. I think when, let's say, for example, if you want to, major in a specific area, let's say marketing or business, you have so many areas that you can work. For example, business, you can work in marketing, finance, any tourism, businesses everywhere, or higher education. You can become a teacher, you can become a director, dean, you can even open up your own practice or become a counselor, So I think every degree is meaningful. You just have to think, sometimes even outside of the box of what you want to do. So, one degree has a lot of different possibilities and salaries. So
Yes.
Yeah, and I like that. What you both have said is there can be a difference, right, based on what's needed for your degree, what the pathway to get there. And so a lot of it starts out with, hey, where do you actually want to go? Like, don't start with the money. Start with, what are you passionate about? What do you feel called to do? Where are your strengths? And then you can look at, all right, what does it look like salary? But I like that strategy, the bottom and low. So we got a couple questions from community members. So we got Jasmine from Poway who sent in this question. She says, if I'm not 100% sure what I want to study yet, is community college a better option, or do I just go to the 4-year?
I would say yes. If you don't know what you want to do, I would say go and take your general education units and maybe take a couple of classes of something that you're possibly interested in. Like if you want to, I don't know, you're interested in majoring in some like math or education, maybe take one education class and then get a feel for what's expected. But if I think it's just money-wise, I would say community college is a smart route for the undecisive student.
I think for me, my recommendation would be, at least for me, I would take a personality test and also a career test. Even before you do anything, you just want to find out maybe something else about yourself that you might not know. I know these tests aren't always accurate, but at least you can get a sense of like, what, I think with my personality, I would be a really good nursing student, or I would be a really good paramedic or firefighter or police officer, something like that. I think this gives you a little bit more insight and I think gets you thinking about different possibilities. So I think, that's a different approach that you can also take. Maybe doing, thinking about any career test. I don't know what they're called, but I think it's like Myers-Briggs.
Oh, yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Katrina, I know you and I have talked quite a bit because I've shared with you, I was a terrible high school student. And so any of my high school teachers, I made it. Hey, but I was, and I went to community college, took some classes, and quickly learned that I needed more structure and accountability. And so I would say, while there's a lot more programming and a lot more, like the degree patterns and all of that are phenomenal. I wish they had those when I was going through college. But what I found at a 4-year is my degree pattern or my degree plan was built for me. right? There was, you can choose this class or this class.
Sure.
And with my ADHD brain and my lack of discipline at that age, that was perfect for me. Okay, A or B. And so that's the other piece too, is knowing what's your learning style. I love the vocation readiness, right? Like that helps you understand. But there are a lot of, there's 16 personalities. I'm not endorsing this organization, but just check that out. That might be something you want to consider. It's a free one. I know we were just
Strength.
the Strength Finders. Is it Myers-Briggs?
Yeah.
Yeah. MBTI is another one. We were just talking about another one too, the numbers one. The Enneagram. Enneagrams. So there's all kinds. I mean, you could do a quick online search, but it's so helpful to learn, because I would say, and this is depending on the institution, ask what type of resources they have, because if you don't know what to study yet, sometimes community college can be the great option, but you got to have a little bit of discipline.
True.
Because there's so many, it's like getting on your streaming.
Yes.
Like, what am I going to watch tonight? There's so many options that you end up spending 3 hours trying to find what you're going to watch before you even watch. I think that's a good metaphor to sometimes what can happen at not just community college, but even some of the 4 years where, hey, you can take a class on Taylor Swift and that counts as your JE. Sign me up. But maybe that has nothing to do with wanting to become a nurse.
I guess we're just back to, as always, it just depends on you. It seems like the easy answer would be that if you don't know what to do, go to a community college. But, what if you aren't really disciplined? That's true. Or the other thing that I think of is I went to a 4-year college and there were a lot of undeclared. And so going to a 4-year not knowing, it's not uncommon. You can be an undeclared major, and some people, maybe that's the route to go because they get into college and they start liking it. Maybe they get into a group or a sorority, or they just see the atmosphere and they see people working hard and that motivates them. Maybe that particular person wouldn't be good at community college because they go and they see people who were not as motivated and they're not as disciplined, and they, so it's really your personality and what would work best for you. There isn't a answer. It's depending on you.
And do you have the money to do that? Because that's the other piece, right? So if you go to a 4-year and it's more expensive and you've made all this investment, all the things that, Belinda and Martha have been talking about, and you don't know what you're going to study, that's also something to consider. It's going to be, most likely, it's going to be cheaper to figure out what you want to study at a community college or at a public 4-year than it is going to be at maybe a more prestigious or private 4-year as well. One of the questions we have from our community, this was coming out of Escondido. So Luis is asking, if I don't have the best grades right now, do I still have a chance to get into a 4-year, or should I just go to the community college down the street?
I would say probably meet with your counselor. That would be my first suggestion, would be meet with your counselor, to see how your grades are going to impact you. I think going into the university setting, most of the times, it's sometimes, we all freak out and we're like, oh my gosh, I got a B, I'm not going to get in, or got a C. But you never know. Sometimes universities change their policies. Colleges and universities change their policies many times. And, sometimes there's exceptions. Not that, they're going to give one to every student. But I think, doing your research, getting help, asking for help with your counselor, and trying to create a plan. And if, a university is not for you, then, maybe community